because I think Giorgio also will tell us that progress in this area is needed. So I'm now very happy to hear from you what we can do together to fight this crisis.
Thank you very much, Paul, that you gave us now the overview, the state of art, what we are discussing. And now we're coming to the keynote, to Giorgio Ferraris. I think you would start directly because your story is very strong. And I think, tell us how you started to prepare you for this crisis, when you started, and what was your experience during this crisis with the measures you took. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Horst. Good afternoon. Perhaps I need to make a preamble that I think that out of this crisis will come out strongly companies that are serious about the safety of their employees. And that goes beyond being certified OSHAs, as of course we are, but having at heart the safety of your people. At Fine Foods, I am legally responsible for the safety of our plants, but we have a team of delegates for safety with the head of human resources, the head of HSE. We meet every month to raise the bar of safety. And as a matter of fact, today, while I was browsing through the files, Heinrich, can I share the screen? Yeah.
Yes, it's coming. Let me
okay.
Share the screen.
Because I came across an initiative we made at Fine Foods, because at times you cannot convince people about the risk. And so we decided at one point that...
I'm sorry, I guess it's not really...
All right. Well,
yeah,
I'll come back later to this.
Yeah, sorry.
But basically, we made an initiative with that was seemed to be ahead of times. We took paintings, old paintings like the Madonna with the Hermine of Leonardo, and we changed it. We put a breathing mask on top of her, and we put it on a T-shirt, and we gave the T-shirt to our employees with saying, "You're a masterpiece. You've got to take care of yourself." When this whole story started to unfold was about around mid-February, our safety team got together and said, what about if this hit us? What should we do? And so we started thinking of what would be the impact on our operations and what we should do to protect our people. And by the time that we had the first case, we issued in one day the safety procedures that eventually turned out to be the same that the Ministry of Health published in the following days. That was basically, if you sneeze or you cough, please stay home and wear gloves and wear a breathing mask, keep the distance. And the days were passing by, and we constantly raised the bar of the safety. As an example, we made shifts shorter to give the time for a company to sanitize the changing rooms and the dressing rooms, because of course the people can get infected in the dressing rooms. In a risk analysis, we discovered the critical areas in the plant were dressing rooms, changing rooms, and the canteen, where people get close to each other. And so we started the initiatives to sanitize areas where there could be a contagion via the surface. Before, the use of face masks were about 70%, and we said, if you feel something, please wear a mask, even if not needed by your current operation, and we raised it to 100. So the whole point was that we could not prevent people from getting infected, because people get infected in their private life. But we could avoid that the infection could be passed on to some other employee. It was very important because also we sanitize our plants. We shut down the plant for 3 days, and we sanitize them with sodium hypochlorite, with hydrogen peroxide and hydroalcoholic solutions. And that was to reinforce the concept that if you come to work, it's a safer place than going to a grocery store. People liked it. And
Giorgio, sorry, could I interrupt you right quick? Now it's possible to share your screen. You can do it yourself.
Okay. Let me see if I can. So here we go. So this was the initiative I was talking of. We made T-shirts, and see, I'm not sure you can see it, but Basically, we made T-shirts with the Madonna with the Hermine, with the breathing mask, and the ballerina with safety shoes. And we share them, we gave them to all our employees. So basically, we worked very hard to explain to our people that Fine Foods was a safe place to be. We are at about 80% workforce, and we are in a privileged situation. We do some competitive intelligence, and even though we are privileged in a privileged environment, because as producers of pharmaceuticals and food supplements, we are considered essential business, so we are allowed to continue. But the amount of people coming to work is amazing. Also because most of the people who stay home are people who have perhaps the beginning of a cold, and now it's the season of allergies, the season of colds, and we ask them to stay home. So it's not because they have some risk. We have no positive in our company. We have one case of someone who was already home, so he didn't get it at Fine Foods and was not coming to work. Unfortunately, 5 people lost their parents, and several lost grandparents. And I spoke with each of them, I mean, the one who lost the parents, and there are stories that are really heartbreaking. People were in the one that was in 68-year-old and didn't have anything, and all of a sudden she went to the hospital and they never saw her again. I remember one that was a strong guy, 73-year-old, a bull. They said the virus will never touch him because it's too strong, and he didn't make it. And despite that, people find the strength to come to work. And perhaps I should come to point 2, because that is why Bergamo. Horst, if you agree, I would move to this other part because it is very intriguing.
Yes, you follow your own route. I think it's the best.
Okay, please stop me if you have some question or if you want me to do something else. Why Bergamo? Because we don't have a big Chinatown. So it's not a large town. I mean, the province of Bergamo is only 1.1 million people, and it's curious. There are a few things that are interesting about Bergamo. First, the Bergamaschi are hard workers, very strong, and they go to work no matter what. And if they have a 38.5 fever, you've got to shoot them for them to stay home. They go to work. And I'm positive that at one point someone was sick, went around and spread it. The second thing is that families are very close. They are very connected. It's a great population. I mean, it's amazing. You got to know them. There is a video about the Bergamaschi. It's in Italian. I wanted to do some captioning because we should circulate it. But this video, as they say, everybody was in awe. It was ecstatic with the Chinese building a hospital in 10 days because they never saw the Bergamaschi. And so they called 10 people, 15 people. They showed up 250. In the first few days, they put 10,000 free hours for free just to build a hospital. So amazing workers. But something else is that they're very close as a community. They are close to older people. And they typically live in a house with a 2-story house, or where the grandparents live on floor level, and the kids live on the upper floor with their grandchildren, and that is the perfect setup for the family. Unfortunately, it turned out to be very deadly for the coronavirus because, let me share another slide of the London Business School that is interesting. So all the Italians are more connected to the young. So you see the orange bars, Italy, green bar, Germany, but I believe it's the same for all the other countries in Europe. So these are the average daily contacts with those 70 plus by age group. So the contacts of Italians with older people are significantly more. So that means that older Italian people got more affected than any other people, any other country. And that is I believe that is the other reason why we got so infected. But the province population is reacting extremely well. People are very disciplined, and the measures were taken very seriously. Not in all other parts of Italy, in Europe, were taken so seriously. And I keep track daily of the evolution of new cases. And let me share another spreadsheet. Maybe hang on one sec. Here we go. These are the new cases of Lombardy. Lombardy is the region of Milan, is about 10 million people, the heart of Italy's economy. And unfortunately, there was something that was not logical about this curve. And it's the fact that it starts in a city, then that city starts going down, there is another city that goes up, and then another city goes up. So there are factors that are offsetting each other. So I checked the moving average, but even that not really helping. When you go into the specific of a province that is a smaller cluster like Bergamo, I believe you have a better idea of the impact of the virus and the evolution of the contagion. Look at this. This is what happened in Bergamo. And you see that there is a constant up and down, and then going up and down, and going up and down. But the interesting thing is that if we see the moving average, it's very good. So I don't want to say to close, don't want to jinx it, but we're getting out of it. And so that is why I'm quite optimistic on the outlook. I think is an amazing story of our company, what we are doing. We are producing, we are receiving goods, we are shipping out. We have good continuity for our customers. And that's the important thing as a company. The important thing for our population is that they are reacting quite well. And the path forward, in my opinion, is that we don't have to stop. This is my second crisis because I lived 9/11. I lived in Manhattan on 9/11. So it's the second time that I'm hit by a major crisis. Of course, that was different, but still I remember that at the time we went back to work immediately, and we were asked to go back to our regular business. I started flying again, and situation in the airport was extremely tense. Everywhere there was a high level of tension, but business went back. And I believe that is what we need to do. So to go back to business as soon as possible with protections, that is very important. Companies need to understand that they have to protect their employees and do everything they can with procedures, safety measures, protections of devices for individual protection, but they've got to go back to work. Because if this goes on too long, then we'll be hitting badly our population much more than coronavirus.
Thank you very much. I have to say it's really touching how you describe and tell us what's happening in Bergamo. I think there's really a humanity dimension there. You cannot follow if you don't had the same experience like you, what's happening there. I think this, and that you show also that this is not about only technical acts and economically acts, it's also how to work together, how to take care about the employees, and that there are families behind who are infecting also them, that this is really also emotional, I think really a tough thing, a very tough thing. One question before we go to the impulse statement I would have, how you work together with the government, what you heard about the European Union, what is this, in these measures, in these activities you did, can you tell us somehow what you had for help or what for advice, information you got from the Italian government, from the European Union? What is your experience, please?
Let me perhaps just go back to one thing that I forgot. I think that companies have a role in teaching their people and making them sensitive to the risk. And I believe that what we did well at Fine Foods had been to communicate well to all our people. We issued a number of procedures via our intranet, and we asked all our supervisors to explain the risk to everybody. And I believe we served our population outside of the company in helping people to understand the real risk, because many perhaps we are again, I mentioned before, we are privileged because we are a pharmaceutical company, food supplements and pharmaceuticals, so we are more sensitive to the risk of microbiological contamination, and our people are perhaps more receptive. But there is an important role that companies have to play to help their people to understand it. Very honestly, I don't want to say something that is perhaps not so politically correct, but we are, as a company or as pharmaceutical companies, not like Fine Foods, we are a little ahead of the game, because we are typically used to deal with this type of problems on our daily life. So our reaction is much faster. And typically, the measures that were taken by the Italian government, that in my opinion were excellent, were typically a week after or 10 days after what we did at Fine Foods. Same things, but a little later. And also in terms of protection devices, we typically keep like a stock of protective devices. So we didn't hit the crisis of not having them. We are a very conservative company, so we try to always to play it safe. And so also that was a reason why we are in a good shape. I can see that, of course, a city cannot cope with a crisis of this magnitude. You cannot have beds for intensive care to protect yourself for a situation like this. Otherwise, your cost would be through the roof. As a company, perhaps you can do something to be in a safe position, because what really counts is continuity.
This discussion, thank you very much. I think in this discussion we will go also how the also SMEs, but also companies, large companies, have to prepare themselves for such crises, and where it makes sense and where it makes it, we saw it in the bank crisis in another way, how to build up reserves. Now it's a question how we can, as entrepreneur, prepare to such crises. But now it's the time for question and answers. Please raise your hands, ask your question, and say your name and your organization. Paul, perhaps you're opening this, and yeah.
Yes, I just have a short question to Giorgio. You know, I think for us in SME Europe, the most important thing is which advice can we give to our companies and to our entrepreneurs. Do you have a list which types of precaution you took in your company, and how the advisory people in your company had to communicate this? This would be quite important, because then SME Europe could distribute to all our members, and I think that could be very helpful.
Giorgio, please. Sure,
I'll be happy to share what we did. No problem with that. Sure. Of course, depends on the size of the company. I think that the most critical environment is a medium, small sized company, because you have typically one person that decides for everybody, and the flow of communication is relatively limited. So because the information goes up and down, doesn't go across. So that is where in a crisis, so I mean, that situation would be even efficient, and you can have even excellent financials, because you limit your costs, your structure cost to the very minimum. Unfortunately, you're not well equipped to weather a storm like this, where, as an example, every day we have a meeting with my first line of management on Teams. We are 16 people. We are all constantly aligned with everything that is going on with the company. And so I think that is number one, is to decide what to do rapidly. Number two, to communicate efficiently. And perhaps number three, to be convinced that is the right thing to do. Because if eventually you know that something is the right thing, but you're not that motivated to do it, that is where. a strategy without a good implementation is a hallucination, someone said to me. So,
do your people take masks all the day in the company? And do they change their clothes when they go in and out?
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there are steps and procedures for what to do in every moment you are inside the company.
And can we have a list of these practical things?
Sure, absolutely.
Could you
No
prepare
problem.
for us? I think that would be the most helpful thing.
Be very happy.
For the one entrepreneur who has 5 or 20 employees, he should know how to act properly and how to give a feeling, like you said, to the employees. Within our company, we are safe. If you go home, be careful. Huh?
Yeah.
That would be the best message.
Right. I think there is also a sort of, you must be a little paranoid. I'm sorry to say this, but at times when there is a crisis, God is in the detail. You got to make sure that you think of everything. And that is where a group of people can do better than one person. No one in the Olympics that did the 400 meters did better than 4 times 100, never in the world. So that is the point. And thinking of the virus can be passed by documents. Think of it. How many times you pass a piece of paper inside the company, and perhaps someone wouldn't even think of it. But if you are infected and you pass a document to someone else, that is a good way to spread it. So you got to wear gloves. Just to tell you something that is trivial, apparently trivial.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I will read the question of Mrs. Schmidt. Mrs. Schmidt is a former MEP from Austria. So the European single market has to work to guarantee the food supply and the supply of protective clothing, for example, in Europe. What are your ideas to convince the member states to keep their borders open? And in what way do you try to deal with the fear of the people that food from Italy or Spain could be contaminated? Yeah, who wants to take this question?
I have to say one story on it to this. In Lidl, all the pasta from Italy was keeping there, and all the other pastas were really bite out. But the Italian products were staying in the supermarket. It's really strange what you can see sometimes. Giorgio.
It's education of people. There is no evidence that the coronavirus would survive on inanimate surfaces for more than a few hours. So by no means goods could be contaminated that stay in a warehouse and then get shipped. So there is really no risk. And that is the science that, I'm not a virologist, but that's the science that says that. I think that we would not stop this simply by closing the borders, but by educating people how not to infect other people. That is, I'm personally convinced. I'm back to my point that we have to go back to work. I'm not saying to be suicidal. We have got to do it in the right way. So explaining people how they have to behave, how they have to wear protections, and it's doable. We are doing it, and keeping, of course, as always, fingers crossed. We don't have any positive in the biggest concentration. We are above 7,000 per million in this region. That is, consider that, I'm not sure if you see the average, Spain now, that is the first in Europe, is about 2,000, and average of Italy is 1,700 or 1,800. We in the province of Bergamo, we are close to 8,000 per million. So we are 4 times the highest concentration in Europe. But despite that, if you do things right, that is how you control it.
Okay, thank you. Think who wants to ask? One thing I would like to ask Giorgio, what do you think what we can learn after the crisis for the food safety? Is this also a time for reforms? Can we do something better in the future? Should we change something? Should something be more higher standards? Something should be easier? There must be better controls, better support. What are you thinking what you can learn now out of this for food safety?
Well, first, I don't believe there is an issue on food safety in this case. And it's important to say because there is a confusion between the contagion of coronavirus and food safety. There is no risk on food safety. I believe, I want always to see the glass half full. And I believe we've been fortunate, because if this disease were deadlier, like Ebola, we would not be talking of the same thing now. And what we can learn is that our society is a tend not to believe. I believe that when it started in China, people said, oh, well, in China, they are eating bats and dogs, so perhaps they have poor hygiene standard. Not true, because in the Hubei and Wuhan province, they're an extremely advanced province. And when it came to Italy, I think there is always this stereotype of pizza and mandolin and that we are sloppy. Not true, because this region is very advanced in terms of health system, but it hit it. And people disregard it. And I was shocked when I saw the game in Liverpool. I was shocked seeing the spring break in Florida, and or the Mardi Gras in Louisiana, in New Orleans. That means that people didn't take this serious. I think that what this will do is to create consciousness that a virus could be destroying everything that we built after World War II very rapidly.
I just have a question for your company belongs to the essential industries that continues to bring nutrition to the market in a time of lockdown. And limited accessibility to healthy foods, that's really crucial. And I mean, from all the elements that you have to juggle to make sure that the supplies keep on coming, where do you see the biggest threat, and what could the colleagues, the political decision makers do to mitigate that risk that one of those elements is affected?
Well, at this point, honestly, I believe that we are, I don't want to talk it too soon, but I believe we are, I wouldn't say over the hump, but at least we reach a plateau. So I would not consider a serious risk. I mean, the risk is more psychological, of final consumer that are afraid of buying pasta or will not be allowed to go out. That is more a social impact than industrial. From an industrial standpoint, we are perhaps in a better position because we never stopped. We're still running at almost full speed. Other industries will start later, but I don't see a big issue in continuity. For sure, in the food supply chain, and I don't see, we monitor constantly our suppliers, and we have no evidence of interruption of supply. So I'm pretty confident.
Good, thank you then. Thank you very much. And thank you again, Giorgio. It was really very great that you have.
It was my pleasure, my honor, and my privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best. Ciao,
Bye.
ciao, all the best.
Oh,
Bye.